Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. We're going to be looking at Bantay Sray Temple today.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this one. I've been looking through these travel guides and articles, and the pictures are just stunning.
It is a beautiful temple, isn't it?
It is. And so many intricate carvings. I can't wait to kind of dig into those and see what stories they tell.
Absolutely. It's known for that detail, isn't it? The carvings are just exquisite.
Yeah. And it has this nickname, right? Citadel of Women, or sometimes Citadel of Beauty.
Yes. Yes, that's right.
So where should we start? I mean, where is this temple even located?
Well, we're talking about the Angkor Archaeological Park.
Okay.
About 25 kilometers northeast of Angkor Wat. So it's a bit of a journey from the main complex.
Okay.
But well worth it, of course. And you have a variety of ways to get there. I mean, you can hire a car, you can take a tuk-tuk, some people even bicycle there.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's quite a popular cycling route, actually.
I can imagine that would be a really cool way to kind of experience the landscape.
Oh, absolutely. And on the way, you might even pass by the Landmine Museum.
Oh.
So you can kind of combine those two experiences.
Okay, well that's definitely going on the itinerary now.
Yeah.
But let's go back to this nickname, right? Citadel of Women. Where does that come from?
Well, there are a few theories floating around.
Okay.
Some people believe it's because of the abundance of devatas.
Devatas.
Devatas are these beautiful minor female deities, and they're carved all over the temple walls.
I see.
So that's one theory.
Okay.
Others point to the incredibly delicate and intricate carvings themselves, and they say that, the detail is almost feminine.
Okay.
And then there's this other theory that it's named after the pink hue of the sandstone itself.
Oh, interesting.
So you have, a variety of interpretations there.
I love it. It's like a choose-your-own-adventure nickname.
Exactly.
Okay, so we kind of have the location and this really intriguing nickname, but let's talk about the history. When was this temple built, and who built it?
Well, we're going back to 967 AD.
Okay.
And now, this is where things get a little bit different, because unlike a lot of the major Angkorian temples, this one wasn't built by a king.
Oh.
It was commissioned by a courtier named Yajnavaraka.
Yajnavaraka.
Yajnavaraka, that's right. He was a trusted advisor to the king.
Okay.
And what's fascinating is that the temple wasn't just built and then abandoned. It was expanded and used for centuries, at least until the 14th century.
Wow, so it really was a living part of their world.
Absolutely. It shows a lasting reverence for the site.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so how did it kind of get rediscovered? I mean, we're talking about the modern era now. How did it come back into our awareness?
Well, it was rediscovered in 1914,
Okay.
but it didn't exactly make headlines at the time. It wasn't until a few years later that it really gained notoriety, and the reason for that is, let's just say it involved a bit of a scandal.
Okay. I'm all ears.
Well, a French politician and novelist actually stole artifacts from the site. Yeah, it's quite a story. And this theft actually sparked renewed interest in the temple and led to a much-needed restoration process.
It's funny how sometimes those negative events can actually lead to some positive outcomes.
It's true, it's true.
So speaking of the restoration process, what was involved in that?
Well, the restoration of Bantay Sray was actually groundbreaking. They use a technique called anastylosis, which basically means using the original building blocks to piece the structure back together.
It's like a giant ancient jigsaw puzzle.
Exactly. And this technique has since been used to restore other Angkorian monuments.
Wow, that's incredible. It must have been such meticulous work.
Well, very, very detailed.
Okay, so we keep mentioning that this temple is smaller than other temples. How does that kind of impact the experience for visitors?
Well, I think it actually creates a more intimate experience
Right.
because you're not overwhelmed by the sheer size, like you might be at Angkor Wat, for example.
Yeah.
You can really take your time, appreciate those intricate carvings up close.
Yeah.
And speaking of the carvings, we have to talk about that red sandstone.
Yes, the photos are always so striking. It almost looks like the temple's glowing pink.
It's true. It's a very distinctive feature. And it's not just about the color, that red sandstone is also incredibly workable.
Oh.
Which is why the artisans were able to achieve such extraordinary detail in the carvings.
I see. So the material itself kind of lent itself to this incredibly intricate style.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
almost like they were working with wood.
Wow. Okay, so imagine we're walking through this temple. What's the layout? Like, what would we see?
Well, picture this. You approach the temple from the east along a causeway,
Okay.
and this causeway leads you through a series of 3 enclosures.
3 enclosures.
Yeah, each one with its own treasures to discover. The 2 outer enclosures, they would have featured scenes from Hindu mythology, but sadly, some parts have collapsed or been moved to museums over time.
I see.
But then you reach the inner enclosure, and this is where things get really special.
Okay, you've piqued my interest. What's in this inner sanctum?
Well, this is where you'll find the heart of the temple. The 2 libraries, the central sanctuary, and several pavilions.
Okay.
And this is where those intricate carvings we keep talking about, they really shine. Every surface is just covered in them.
Wow.
And since Bante Shrey is predominantly dedicated to Shiva, you'll see a lot of depictions of him and stories related to him, although Vishnu also makes appearances, especially in the buildings on the south side.
So even within this smaller temple, there's still so much to discover.
Oh, absolutely. It's a treasure trove of art and history.
Okay, so for someone who's planning a trip to Bante Shrey, what are your top travel tips?
Well, I would say timing is key.
Okay.
Because the temple is quite exposed to the elements, so I would recommend visiting early in the morning or later in the afternoon to beat the crowds and avoid the midday heat.
That's a good point.
And maybe combine your visit with some of the other outer temples in the Angkor complex to make a full day of it.
Okay.
But honestly, just take your time, wander through the galleries, soak in the details, and maybe even consider hiring a local guide.
Yeah, a guide could probably really provide some great context and insights.
Oh, absolutely. They can really bring the history to life for you.
So it's not just about snapping a few photos and moving on. It's about really immersing yourself in the experience.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm sold. Now, you mentioned something before about Bante Shrey, not just being a temple, but a whole district. What do you mean by that?
Well, Bante Shrey district, it offers a glimpse into a completely different side of Cambodia. It's rural life at its best.
Okay.
You can imagine homestays in traditional villages, authentic Cambodian food cooking classes where you can learn to make it yourself.
Wait, hold on. So you're telling me I can go from exploring these ancient temples to learning how to cook authentic Khmer food all in the same area?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a truly immersive experience.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm starting to think a whole week in Bante Shrey district might be in order.
It's a hidden gem waiting to be discovered.
Okay, now you've got me thinking about something.
Oh.
We've talked about the grandeur of Angkor Wat, and then this incredibly intricate detail of Bante Shrey. What does that tell us about art and devotion in ancient Khmer society?
That's a fascinating question, isn't it? It really makes you think about the different ways in which they express their beliefs and their artistry.
Yeah, it's not just one size fits all, right?
Exactly. And I think that's something to ponder as we delve deeper into the stories and symbolism of Bante Shrey.
Okay, well, I am ready for more. Let's keep going.
You know, as we've been talking about this temple, I
Right.
keep coming back to the fact that it was dedicated to Shiva.
Right.
And I don't think that's just a minor detail. I think it really adds another layer of meaning to the whole experience.
Okay, I'm all ears. I'll admit my knowledge of Hinduism could use a little boost.
Yeah.
What's so special about Shiva in this context?
Well, Shiva is a very complex deity in Hinduism.
Okay.
He's often known as the destroyer, but he's also the transformer,
Okay.
the god of both creation and destruction, constantly shaping and reshaping the universe.
Wow, that's a lot to process.
It is a profound concept.
So how does this kind of imagery tie into Bante Shrey specifically?
We have to think about those intricate carvings,
Right.
the stories that they depict, the very act of creating something so beautiful and lasting out of stone.
Okay.
It's all a reflection of Shiva's creative power, this ability to bring order out of chaos.
I see what you mean. It's like the temple itself is a microcosm of Shiva's cosmic dance of creation and destruction.
Exactly. And this connection to Shiva, it really adds a layer of spiritual depth to the whole experience of visiting Bante Shrey.
Okay, so it's not just about admiring pretty carvings, it's about connecting with something much larger than yourself.
Precisely.
Okay, we keep talking about these carvings, but we haven't really talked about what they depict. What kind of scenes and stories would we actually see at Bante Shrey?
Ah, the carvings. This is where Bante Shrey truly shines. Remember, it's dedicated to Shiva.
Right.
So a lot of the carvings depict scenes from Shaivism, which is a branch of Hinduism that focuses on Shiva as the supreme god.
Okay, I'm ready for a mythology lesson. What kind of stories are we talking about?
Well, for example, you might see depictions of this epic battle between the gods and the asuras.
Asuras.
Asuras are these demonic beings.
Okay.
And there's this one famous carving that shows the duel between Vali the monkey god and his brother Sugriva.
Okay.
It's a scene straight out of the Ramayana, one of the great Hindu epics.
Wow. It's amazing to think that these stories were so important that they were literally immortalized in stone like that.
It's powerful, isn't it?
It is. Are there any other carvings that really stand out to you?
Oh, there are so many.
Yeah.
You'll also find depictions of Shiva's wife Parvati in various forms.
Okay.
And then there are scenes from the legend of Krishna, another important deity in Hinduism.
So it's not just one story. It's like a whole tapestry of myths and legends woven into the very fabric of the temple.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
The level of detail is just incredible. Like, these carvings aren't just carvings. They're windows into another world.
And you know, these carvings, they weren't just there for decoration.
Oh, there's more to it.
Oh, absolutely. They served a much deeper purpose.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What was their purpose?
Well, you have to remember that these temples were places of worship,
Right.
but they were also meant to educate and inspire. The carvings served as visual aids, helping people understand the stories and teachings of Hinduism.
Like an ancient storybook carved in stone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And imagine the impact these carvings would have had on people who couldn't read.
Oh, yeah.
They could come to the temple and experience these stories in a way that was so powerful and memorable.
It's giving me chills just thinking about it. Standing there surrounded by all these intricate carvings, feeling the weight of history and mythology all around you.
It's a truly immersive experience.
Okay, so we've covered the carvings, the stories, the spiritual significance. Is there anything else we should know about Bante Shrey before we virtually pack our bags?
Well, remember that Bante Shrey was built during a time of great prosperity and artistic innovation in the Khmer Empire.
Right.
And this is reflected not just in the carvings, but in the architecture itself.
Okay, architecture time. What should we be looking for?
Well, Bante Shrey is a classic example of Khmer temple architecture, but it does have its own unique features. The towers or prasats, for example, they're relatively small compared to those of other temples,
Okay.
but they're incredibly ornate. They're almost like miniature versions of the grand towers you'd see at Angkor Wat.
So it's like a perfectly crafted miniature world.
Exactly. And of course, the use of red sandstone, as I mentioned before, that's another distinctive feature.
Right.
This type of sandstone was prized for its color and workability, and it gives Bante Shrey that unmistakable pink hue.
I can just picture how the sunlight would play off those pink towers and the intricate carvings. Absolutely stunning.
It's a sight to behold.
You know, it's interesting that Bante Shrey was commissioned by a courtier rather than a king.
Yes.
We touched on that earlier, but why is that significant?
Well, it shows that art and patronage weren't limited to the royal family in ancient Khmer society.
Okay.
Wealthy and influential individuals like Yajnavarajah, they also played an important role in supporting the arts and building temples.
So it wasn't just a top-down system. There's a whole ecosystem of support for art and culture.
Precisely.
That's fascinating. It reminds us that history is made by individuals, not just kings and queens.
It's true. We often focus on the grand narratives.
Right.
But it's the individual stories like that of Yajnavarajah that really bring the past to life.
Absolutely. It reminds us that these temples weren't just grand monuments. They were expressions of personal devotion and artistry. Speaking of personal stories, is there any particular anecdote about Bante Shrey that you find particularly captivating?
Well, there's one story that I find particularly fascinating.
Okay.
And it involves the theft of those artifacts we mentioned earlier.
Oh, yes, the politician turned arsonist.
Exactly. The incident that really brought Bante Shrey back into the spotlight.
Okay, tell me more.
So the culprit was a French writer and politician named André Malraux.
Okay.
He was quite a controversial figure, known for his adventurous spirit and, let's say, his flexible approach to the rules.
Sounds like my kind of guy. So what happened?
Well, in 1923, Malraux and his wife, along with a couple of accomplices, they traveled to Bante Shrey.
Okay.
And they were captivated by the temple's beauty,
Right.
but they also saw an opportunity.
Oh, this sounds a little shady.
Well, Malraux and his crew, they decided to steal several large carvings from the temple.
What?
They believed they could sell them for a fortune back in Europe.
Wow, they really went for it. Did they get away with it?
Not quite. They were caught trying to smuggle the carvings out of the country.
Oh.
Well, Malraux was arrested and sentenced to prison, although he was later released on appeal.
What a story. So it was all thanks to this daring art heist that Bante Shrey got the attention and restoration it deserved.
It's a strange twist of fate, isn't it?
It really is. And I think this incident kind of highlights the complex relationship we have with these historical artifacts.
Absolutely.
The desire to possess them, to study them, to preserve them. It's a very multifaceted issue.
It is, and it reminds us that these temples aren't just beautiful objects.
Right.
They're part of a living history, a cultural heritage that needs to be protected and respected.
Exactly. And in a way, Malraux's actions, however misguided they were, they ultimately contributed to Bante Shrey's preservation.
It's true. Sometimes even negative events can have unintended positive consequences.
It's like a strange twist of fate. Okay, I think we've covered just about everything there is to know about Bante Shrey. I feel like I could give a lecture on this temple now.
You've certainly mastered the key points.
But there's always more to learn, right?
Absolutely. That's the beauty of it.
Okay, well for now, I think it's time for us to wrap up this part of our exploration of Bante Shrey. We've delved into the history, the mythology, the architecture, even a bit of art theft intrigue.
It's been quite a journey.
But we're not done yet. Stay tuned, because in the final part of our deep dive, we'll be exploring what Bante Shrey can teach us about ourselves and our own relationship with art and spirituality. Welcome back to our deep dive into Bante Shrey Temple. It's been quite a journey so far.
It really has.
We've uncovered so much about its history, the mythology, those intricate carvings, even a bit of art theft.
A little bit of intrigue always adds to the story.
Exactly. But I want to kind of shift gears a little bit in this last part and think about what we can take away from all of this.
Yeah.
What can Bante Shrey teach us about ourselves?
Yeah.
About our relationship with art, with spirituality?
That's a great question. And I think one of the things that Bante Shrey really highlights is the importance of slowing down.
Okay.
Appreciating the details, not just in art, but in life in general.
I like that. How do you see that reflected in the temple itself?
Well, you think about the scale of Bante Shrey, right? It's smaller than a lot of the other Angkorian temples.
Right.
But it's filled with the most intricate carvings, the finest details. It kind of encourages you to take your time to really look closely, to see the artistry, the stories embedded in every surface.
You're absolutely right. It's not about being overwhelmed by sheer size or grandeur.
Mm.
It's about being drawn into the subtleties, the nuances. And it makes me think about how often we rush through experiences in life without really taking the time to appreciate them fully.
It's true. We live in a very fast-paced world.
We do.
Yeah.
And so Bante Shrey is almost like a meditation on mindfulness in a way.
Exactly. It's about finding stillness and meaning in those smaller things.
And it's not just about the visual details either, right? It's about the stories that those details tell, those layers of history and mythology.
It's about connecting with something larger than ourselves, a heritage that spans centuries.
Yeah. And recognizing that human impulse to create beauty, to express devotion, to leave a mark on the world.
Absolutely.
It makes me think about the artisans who carve those details. You know, the dedication and the skill that it must have taken to create something so lasting and so beautiful.
It's incredible, isn't it?
It really is. It's a powerful reminder that art can transcend time, that it can connect us to the past and inspire us in the present.
It's a bridge between eras.
It is. And speaking of connections, you know, we talked about Bante Shrey being dedicated to Shiva, the god of creation and destruction.
Right.
And that adds another layer to the meaning of the temple for me.
Absolutely.
It's like the temple itself embodies that cycle of creation and destruction, of transformation and rebirth.
Exactly. And that theme of transformation, it's also reflected in the history of Bante Shrey itself.
How so?
Well, think about how it was rediscovered and restored, brought back to life after centuries of neglect.
Right.
And even the art theft incident, as controversial as it was, ultimately it contributed to the temple's preservation.
It's like Bante Shrey has this resilience, this ability to endure and even thrive through challenges.
It does. And I think that's a pretty inspiring message.
It is. It tells us that even in the face of destruction or loss, there's always the potential for renewal, for rebirth.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Bante Shrey is a testament to the enduring power of art, faith, human ingenuity.
It's a place that really inspires awe and wonder, and it leaves us with a sense of connection to something much larger than ourselves.
And I think that's the most valuable lesson we can take away from this deep dive.
What's that?
Bante Shrey isn't just a beautiful temple. It's a reminder to slow down, to appreciate the details, to connect with the stories that surround us, and to believe in the power of transformation.
Beautifully said. I think we've successfully unearthed the treasures of Bante Shrey, both the tangible and the intangible.
We have. And hopefully we've inspired you to explore further, to discover your own hidden gems, whether it's in ancient temples or in the everyday moments of your own life.
Keep exploring. Keep those minds curious.
And on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive into Bante Shrey Temple. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time for another adventure.
Until then, goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.